This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. My guest today is Susan Seymoure. Susan, thank you again for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Heather. It's my pleasure.
For those of you that are watching, please go ahead and watch part one. In part one, Sue goes ahead and she tells her whole story, and it's really a really incredible one. And we've been talking about heaven and the beings she met, including Jesus. And I want to focus more on that now, Sue.
Sure.
If you could tell us just what you experienced, what you talked about, what you learned.
It was very simplistic and very enormous at the same time. I learned from Jesus a million things in a moment. I learned so much about the importance of life, the gratitude we should have for our life, how we were made to have this one, he wishes all good things for life, and how much joy he gets from us. How gifts, Jesus taught me, are like everything's in the little things. There's so much in the little things, and the joy is there's an abundance of it if we can just choose to look for it. He taught me a lot about children and how they were so significant and loved and special. Women, men, everyone. It was all amazing what he would, the imprints, I call them, were, they just never end. And I would say I could learn, and I would say nature for me became a great teacher. The rhythms of nature were just a great way for people to ground when they're feeling their thoughts are becoming overwhelming and they're getting lost in their thoughts. Nature can ground your being, and then you can slow it down, because in being simple, and I think one of the philosophers, I don't know if it was Einstein or somebody, once wrote, and it just connected me to Christ. It said, simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. And I learned, when I get too involved in my sophistications, to look for the simplicity. Even in an argument or discord or struggles, that the answer is usually right in front of you. I learned that Jesus is not hiding. He's not invisible. He's not far away. He came here as a man to show us what that was like. If you were, in a human form, he showed us humble. He showed us loving. He showed us healing. And the healing for me, I took to another level, and that inspired me to become an RN. And I asked, so I also learned that if you ask, you'll hear it, you'll get the answer. And the answers come when people say, I hear it. For me, hearing is, it comes through my thoughts. So your thoughts, if they're clear, and if you remove your own ego and thoughts for the day, and you ask with an open heart, and he knows your heart. So he also knows if you're doubting, you might not get your answer, because who really wants to work with a doubter? If you're telling someone an answer and they're doubting you, it gets kind of like, well, maybe they're not ready. They really don't want my answer. And so he knows enough to know when to give you the right answer, when you really want it. And I learned that from Jesus. I learned that he never leaves you. He told me he wouldn't, and I'm Now I'm 61 this October, and he has never, ever, ever left me. Only I leave him. When I get off on my life and I don't want to think about anything or anyone. And I remember like times when I was young as a teenager, but the reminders are everywhere. They're in other people. You'll have moments with others where you really feel this great connection. You're like, I feel like I know you, or I feel like I've been here before. So, animals, there's just so many different connections. He's everywhere. He's in every living thing that is good, everything that's beautiful, kind, and loving, everything that is full of life and beauty and creation. And people ask, like, what are my gifts? What he taught me, gifts come. If we're like him, we're able to create. So we're here to create. And some people create laughter. Some people create information and news. And some people create music. Oh my goodness. I saw the movie August Rush and I was like, that boy felt the music. Christ is about creation. He's about humor. He's about laughter. He's about everything that moves us into the best place and the best experience possible. I never find him in negativity. I don't find him in war. I don't find him in starvation. I don't find him in famine. I think he hopes that we create better situations. And I don't know how all that works, but I do know that there's a failure there for us to hear or be able to listen, because I know that the solutions are obtainable. So it's always kind of like, wow, I don't have the answers, but I know they're there, and I'm not sure as a collective we can always find them. And we try, but it's there. So Christ let me know that he has sadness, that he has a wish for everyone to feel incredibly good and safe with him. And all we have to do is ask. So I also learned that you don't have to be a theologian you don't have to have a high IQ, or so to speak. There's so much intimidation around him. And I remember thinking, that's not what he wants. He just wants to love you, and he hopes you love him back. Just like any good relationship, just like a mother loves a child, and you really hope you do everything you can for that child and that they will grow to love you back, that they will choose to love you back with their whole heart. And that's what he taught me, was about love, and forgiveness, and there's all these rules with love, and we're all trying to learn to love, and we need boundaries and things, and I've learned that forgiveness, he wants us to be able to protect ourselves and our hearts from unloving or bad experiences, but he also wants us to be able to work on love, and the relationship with him is the one relationship. If you have nothing else in like, if I had nothing else in my life going on and I felt like no one here loved me, everything went wrong, I have that relationship. And I know that relationship is the one that I never have to have my guard up, and I don't have to pretend, and I don't have to be anyone but me. And he'll know the truth in all of it. And so that is the most fulfilling relationship when you nurture it. It's very fulfilling. So,
Sue, there are a lot of people who love God, who are very faithful to God, but Jesus is not part of their religion. Did you get a sense of what he thought about that?
Yeah, I feel like he's the only one who's not a religion. Um, he wasn't a religion. He was just Jesus. And he came here to show us who he was. And recently I just saw the road to Ephesus, and you can go to Mary's house and you can see where Jesus walked. You can pick up a rock and you can physically go and see that he was a real being and he lived.
But what about people who don't know he's there, that don't believe?
Um, I used to wonder that, and I think he still loves them, but he's a gentleman, and I don't think he'll impose himself. But I think he has had enough people say that he exists, and it's a choice if people want to choose to get to know or love someone. Just like, if someone sets you up with a friend or any type of relationship, you can choose to get to know more, or you can choose to say, no, I'm going to stick with this. And I wonder too, like, what if I grew up in China and I believed in Buddha? Or what if my family ancestry was something, um, yeah, there's so many different religions. And I've been part of and invited to many different worship places, and I have friends in all kinds of religions. I don't feel anything but love for them. I just think that it's a choice of choosing. People have free will. And that's love. He's a gentleman. He doesn't create a religion that says believe in me. You know, I mean, you need to believe if you want to go to heaven. I mean, in from what I know, why would you want to go if you don't believe in him? It's his heaven. I was there and I saw him, and it's like, well, if you're thinking you're going to go to heaven, but you're an atheist, I'm not sure. If you're thinking you're going to heaven, I'm not sure why you'd want to go to a party that you're not familiar with the host of the party. So, or why would you go to someone's house and you don't know them or you don't like them? Or you're like, well, they're not real. So it's simple. It's just so, I think personally that they'll meet him and you'll get the choice. That's what I think. I think what I learned was you will know exactly what you're supposed to know, and you can choose even when you cross over. I think you can still choose whether to call out or not. I've met people that have said, you know, and that they called out in the end from different religions. I think he loves everyone. I think he loves absolutely everyone. I mean, if you believe in love, to me, it's the same thing. He's the same for me as love. But I don't know, Heather, to tell you the truth, how he deals with all of that. I just know he's a gentleman, and he wouldn't tell you to love him. He would show you everything he could, and he'd really hope you would choose it. That's about it. Some religions are very strict, and um, if you don't follow the rules, you know, there's all these consequences. And I don't know, it's all in the heart. It's all about the heart. It's all about finding that connection. And even though I think I'm a pretty loving person here, I know I'm not anything like I could be unless I'm really like dialing in and asking him, am I doing the right thing here? Because I check in a lot just because I know like I can have a temper, or I can be, I don't know if it's a temper, but I'm not a perfect person. So I try to always check in and say, how could I handle this better? Can you give me the words? Can you show me? Um, it's just really great. It's just all for our benefit. There's, it's all benefits. It's all gains. There's no, like, why wouldn't I help myself when I know there's only benefits and there's absolutely no trickery or um, manipulation. He's not a manipulator. He's not going to manipulate people like, oh, love me or else. It's more like, well, I don't know if you're going to want to come to my party if you don't really know me. Like, that might not be what you want. So you really need to understand that that's not a really big thing to ask. That somebody says, I hope you love and like me if you're going to get involved in my house, if you're going to live with me. If you want to live with me, you should kind of know me a little bit.
A lot of your conversation with Jesus took part under a tree. Why do you think that was? And what else did you see around you?
Trees, that I try to look in the symbolism of things, and because I knew my time there, I had to take that in. There was so much meaning. That tree, for me, not knowing anything about trees, I couldn't believe that tree, how does a tree have knowledge? Like, how does a tree know things? And it was just so natural, because the life force that he is, and that everything that he touches is full of this life force, full of information, full of just, it's extraordinary. What a masterful creator of art and of, everything living has a purpose. There's always a purpose. Yeah, it was very knowledgeable, the tree. And also, I don't know, it was just kind of, it was so, I would love to know more about the tree. I haven't really asked, but I could ask. I'll get that information tonight. But he sat with me there, and mainly that was like a location where the 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 council came. It was like a circle. It was just a beautiful meadow. I saw more when I gave birth, and I was struggling with my first child, and the nurse said, "Find your happy place." And I closed my eyes and I found myself in the meadow, and so it was purple and white and yellow flowers. Only purple, white, and yellow, I remember that. It was wildflowers, so I've always had this draw to them. Natural, simple wildflowers, beautiful, in the meadow, by the tree.
And what did Jesus look like?
Um, and I love that question. That's a great question. So I learned from the experience. For me, there was just a lot of light, and I didn't focus intensely on features. They weren't really clear. It wasn't really a clear image, because it was more of a feeling and more of an embrace. And he was just so everywhere. It was very overwhelming and loving. But I have seen photos that will sometimes just bring me right to a feeling of him. And he looked very much like, he looked like a human being, full of just glowing light. And it's fuzzy for me, but at other times, like, I'll see something and I'm like, that's what it was. So in that, there was a lesson, because I thought, why didn't I, learn this, see this or that? And the lesson for me was beauty and our outside appearance is much more of a giant focus here. He wanted me to know that love can be without the details. Like, I could see love without seeing where his eyes without wrinkles, was his, like the things we think of here that we are attracted to, like we know we have to look a certain way to make certain impressions. That's here. So there he showed me all this beauty and yet the light, and he showed me sort of how he looked, like his eyes. At times I caught glimpses of the warmth and the colors. I could see his face if I asked to. He looks similar to some really beautiful paintings out there. I'd have to recollect who the artists are, but when I see them, I know we're not far off from our drawings. But I don't remember his, like people say, was he black? Was he skin color? His skin was like not really shown as much as that his coloring was in the middle. So I'm like, he could have been anything to anyone. And I think Christ would show himself to you the way you need to see him, or the way he's just bigger than anything we could. He's more imaginative. He's more artistic. He's just beautiful. So he'll show people how he wants to be seen, just like he came as a man.
That makes so much sense, what you're saying.
And I learned here, I came back and I learned here, like, wow, why was I so irritated by people who could only see someone's physical beauty? My husband would say, wow, like someone would approach me and sit by me in a restaurant. And like one time a young child, not too young, but definitely wouldn't have been considered by our standards of beauty from Hollywood, but and to me was the most beautiful person because I could feel that person's heart. And so our relationships here, like a lot of times we miss their heart because we're busy looking at the appearance. And as a nurse later on, I learned, like, I would work in the burn unit and a person would be completely disfigured. And I had an absolute like crush on some of them because they were so loving. I was like, oh my gosh, that is the most beautiful person. And I remember bringing pictures of home of my ventilator patients and so many different things and, paraplegics. And my mother would say, look at all those, she would find the sadness in it. And I would see the extraordinary being. And as a nurse, because healing was such a powerful takeaway, his healing clearly was what healed me. He let me know, as a nurse, I got to see the miracles. I got to see just so much, so much, the beauty in people. It's extraordinary when and then you can also see when it's not there. And sometimes it's not there in the most physically beautiful things that we value. So beauty is real, and looks and descriptions. But Christ to me was a bunch of light surrounding pretty much what he looked like when he walked the earth. He let me see. And that was probably something I was meant to come back and say, because I was meant to come back and say he's real. And he came here to be real. And I always get frustrated. People think he's so fictitious, some people, or they think he's so far away. And I think, my goodness, he came here as a man and he showed you what a perfect man would be like. And he was a carpenter and he was, one-on-one with people, and he walked with prostitutes, and we've kind of created our own hierarchy of things here that sometimes aren't aligned with what I saw. And that's okay, but it's sort of sad, for me. You can, when people are looking for love on these websites and they're looking for looks, and I get it, I get it. There's attraction and all these things, but you hope people can just go deeper, just deeper. He's just deep. That's the real beauty, is going a little deeper.
One thing that surprised me or surprises me about your story is that the council made the decision, or this serious man, together, they made the decision to allow you to come back. Why didn't Jesus weigh in on that and say right away, yes or no?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think the council actually made the decision. I think they were just part of him showing me that there is an organization. It's organized. There's organization. Much like a really wow leader, you know, he's all about including. He's inclusive, and yet he's in charge. And so there's a learning, there's inclusive. They didn't make the decision, but they were empowered to greet. And I don't know, like maybe that first level or second level is the level that, but it's all through him. He's in every blade of grass. Like it's all his creation. It's all his design. Um, how I came back at the end was I saw it wasn't through the being that showed me wisdom. Over the mountain, there was a golden, I call it like a golden hand. I don't know how to use any earthly words to describe unearthly pictures. But I guess it was like a golden, I call it an arm, but it was so big. It was so big, and it came through this golden light. And that's when Jesus let me know that, you know, he was this royal king. Like like big words came through me, like majestic, and it just was wow, like wow, there it is. And this golden light came through and he connected with it. And then that was what sort of, and that's when I knew, he was in charge of everything, and he always had my decisions. People, you wonder, like, is it predestined? Is it um it's just so magical. I guess he used me, and he used me, and he probably has lots of reasons that I'll never know until when I'm supposed to. And I was able to return. And I remember thinking how lucky I was. I remember thinking life was a gift. It was my second birthday. And my family called it that, my second birthday, and we celebrated privately every year. It was like I got a second chance at life. So I never felt like I want to go back, in the sense of I wanted to honor that life was my mission and that I got a second chance and that I'm going to use it for whatever is best. And I try, and I found so much more meaning in life. Um, I'm a lot sometimes. People will tell me, like, oh, does everything have to be deep? And I try to lighten up, but I had to fake it a lot because I love the depths of things. And, through my children and my husband, they didn't know my story and I didn't share it. I just really channeled it through, not channeled, but I used my miracle to become an RN, and that was how I could heal others and feel his presence with me. Um,
And you didn't share your story because your mother asked you not to.
I look back and I go over it so many times, but recently I realized she wholeheartedly knew that this was a miracle. There were nuns in the hospital that, 40 nuns at least, that were down on their knees because of my physical ailments and watching me. I kept healing before their eyes. And I know he did that so that it was witnessed. He's just so brilliant. And so they're all watching this paralyzed child with big contusions. If I would have just had one of the injuries, that would have been enough to say she's not going to make it. And I had multiple contusions that most people come back either a vegetable or they pass away.
Because you hit your head along metal poles the whole way up.
Yeah, and as a nurse, I got to study, and I worked in brain and spinal cord later in my life. I kept seeing more and more of the miracles of science, because not of science, of Christ, because through learning science, I learned there really isn't an answer. And I searched for the answer. I wanted to disprove it sometimes, because sometimes I felt so lonely, and I thought, it can't just be me, but I felt so alone. I wanted to almost discredit it, like, no, it's scientifically that can't happen. And the more I tried to disprove it scientifically, the more I would not be able to. So I became a brain and spinal cord injury nurse. And at one point, those contusions that I had in my temporal lobes, both sides, the size of baseballs, no, that's not a recovery that you can, have. So they were watching me heal. And I didn't understand how long it was, because time for me was very confusing after returning. And I actually just recently found a report card that showed some absences that after my mom passed, I found it in her, lots of paperwork. So it was only a very short time, like within a couple of weeks. And then I became a gymnast and a cheerleader that same year.
Wow.
Yeah. And
you broke your neck and then you became that.
Yeah. And it was competitive, but I thought it was so much fun. My mom, she believed it. Second birthday, just wanted to not have anything that was not normal. So she didn't know how the world would react, and she was afraid for me. And so they all wanted my mother to sue for millions of dollars, the ski hill. She wouldn't. She didn't want me to repeat the story on a stand. She just wanted me to go back to school and life will continue. She knew it was a miracle, though. She did send me to church. Like, I went to churches looking for Jesus's house, and I went to several in the area. And then my mom said, tell them. When I finally found a church that I kind of stayed around, and I talked to my teacher that was teaching the classes for confirmation, and no one really wanted to know. I mean, there was no one that could embrace it or answer it. They kind of knew it was true, but they were like, it was over. It just felt, and then I wasn't sure if anybody wanted to hear my story. So I kept it to myself. And my mom said that's probably best, because they might only just ruin it, and hold it in your heart and keep it between you and Jesus and see what happens. And I did, and I believed her. And so as time went by, people would ask me, like, why are you so happy? And they would always, I had my share of problems, and they would always say, how do you always come out with this attitude? And people would always come to me for advice. And some of my friends were physicians, and they would say, hang your shingle out, because the whole neighborhood always asks advice, including them. And so the truth of it is, that always came through me, not of me. And my learning, and just to make sure, I'll always send up a quick prayer to say, please, make sure that it is through me, that it comes through of you, and that it's not my own personal experience or my own words. I always want to make sure that he uses me for what he needs to be done. And I always hope I do a good job, but people picked up on it over time.
Well, and I heard you say that when we pray and put something in God's hands, we can trust that whether we like the outcome or not, he's handling it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think now the advantage you have is you realize there is a one-on-one relationship. But for a lot of the rest of us, what we're thinking is we're one of billions. And we wonder if God would really go out of his way for us. How do we feel that connection, that oneness?
There is nothing that I could say that would be more assuring than I was literally hung and I died and I saw him and it was real, and it was at 12 and I'm 61, and it did nothing but grow. And I see Christ every day, everywhere, in plain, his works. It's no, there's nothing more real to me. Um, and it's a choice. I came back to share the story, and it's an absolute choice. I hope people use their own discernment on who they believe and who they don't believe. So I tell it very factually. I'm not preaching or anything like that. It's sharing. And but you are a miracle. Every single person is a miracle. And if they ever forget they're a miracle, that's such a great sadness. Life is a miracle. Miracles happen. You can find miracles in, my goodness, in everything and everywhere. Small moments. And I find a lot in gratitude. Listen, love is the one thing that every human being strives to reach if they have an open heart. There are people with a closed heart or a darkened heart or a soul that maybe has lost its way and they're striving for other things. But when you have love in your heart and in your life, that's the one thing we grieve when we lose it with people. So it's the same kind of relationship as you have if you have great love in your life, or even a moment of love in your life. That's the one thing I can tell you is he gives us the ability to love one another. And he says love one another because that's the closest we can feel, by loving one another and helping one another is the closest we can feel to what it's like for him to love every single person. Every single person. And no matter what their outward appearance is or what they're doing or how he loves them. And there's people out there that don't like that because they think you have to perform all these tasks and jump through all these hoops. He loves the most probably horrific person to someone else just as much as the person who does wonderful things. It doesn't matter. He doesn't work that way. His love is free. 100% free, costs nothing. We don't have to do anything. We just have to accept it as it's real.
Sue, you put all of this into a book. Can you tell us about that and where people can get it?
Sure. I put it in a book because I was told when I prayed, if you don't write the book, nothing in your life is going to change. And I was looking for answers on things. And I thought it was a big joke because I don't like to write. And I don't even write cards. So I was like, okay, he's very funny and I'm going to write. And the truth is, it was so traumatic, the actual accident, that putting in a book I hoped would be the easiest way to convey his message. The book is My Secrets from Heaven, and it's on Amazon.
I will put the link in the description.
And it was my way of saying thank you and my way of sharing, so someone can read it quickly in the privacy of their own home and decide how they feel about it. Free will is is a gift of love. It's a loving gift. So that's my experience with Christ and beyond. But thank you, because it's so hard to sum it up in a short time. And I hope I convey what I was supposed to. So
It's been beautiful. If you could give us now some parting words, maybe the most significant thing that you learned.
you matter. And you're never, ever alone. You come into the world, you're designed to be born through a mother. You can't hatch. You have to come in through a human being. Whether they choose to be loving or not is up to their free will. But you're born not to be alone. We're surrounded by billions of people. We keep multiplying. We're here to love one another. We're not meant to be alone. He's with us, so we're not meant to be alone that way. And when you pass, you're not alone either. You're offered a hand to hold and a wonderful eternal existence. So you're everlasting. You're never alone. And our purpose is just so simple, and to love one another and to find joy. It's hard work to find joy sometimes, to get out of our own way, and there's lots of distraction, but you're never alone, I would say, and you're always, always loved, even when you think you're not. And to let God use you, let Him use you. When you see somebody misfortunate or somebody you feel drawn to help, let Him use you in whatever way you're comfortable. I think He's using you with your platform, Heather, which is really clear as day. And I wish you lots of blessings and love moving forward. I hope this grows and reaches many, many people's hearts and lives, that we can find more peace on earth, find more love on this planet. That for those that are looking, some people don't want it.
Right.
But those of us that need it and want it, let the light shine.
Thank you so much for those very kind words. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story today. It really was my pleasure talking to you, and I know this is helping so many people.
Oh, and Heather, I just want people to know that if they think they don't make a difference, anyone who even is hoping to make a difference is.
Really?
And they may not know how, and they may not see it, but I guarantee you, even a person sitting alone in an apartment with a cat, they're making a difference, a huge difference in the world. If their heart, it doesn't have to be what we consider enormous. It's God's enormous is completely different. It's on all kinds of levels. So
I love that.
Everyone should feel valuable, because everyone is valuable. So we should treat each other that way, because that's the truth. So that's my parting words. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming here. It really was great talking to you.
You too. God bless.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.